That photo screamed everything they told themselves they'd forgotten. You looked like peace they never protected. They zoomed in, not for clarity, but for closure they'll never get. You were glowing like pain finally let go. Your photo made their silence look like cowardice. They weren't ready to see you happy without them. You looked like a prayer that stopped asking. That smile, a blade wrapped in softness. They stared because your glow felt like a personal betrayal. You looked like everything they should have fought for. That photo exposed the price of their pride. You didn't pose, you warned. Your image was a goodbye carved in grace. They zoomed in to find cracks. All they saw was fire. You became everything they swore you couldn't. That photo didn't say, "Remember me." It screamed, "Watch me." They weren't staring at you. They were mourning themselves. You looked divine in the ruins they left behind. Your silence echoed louder than a scream in that photo. They zoomed in, searching for the girl they abandoned. You smiled like a storm that made peace with itself. They weren't ready for how whole you looked. You looked like a promise finally kept to yourself. That image forced them to grieve your growth. They saw joy and flinched. You wore healing like a crown in that photo. That wasn't a pose, it was rebirth. You look like the version of you they tried to dim. They stared, hoping to unsee your transformation. You looked like closure finally spoken in color. That photo haunted them with your calm. You looked too free to chase. They paused because your presence had a pulse. You looked like the last chapter they never read. That image hurt because it didn't need them. You weren't trying to be seen. You were already seen. Your smile said, "I made it without you." They zoomed in, but your soul had already zoomed out. That photo looked like a truth they buried alive. You were no longer the girl who begged to be noticed. They saw you healed and hated it. That wasn't your face. It was a funeral for their fantasy. You looked like what they lost but never deserved. That photo was a goodbye they never got to give. You looked like a universe they couldn't orbit anymore. You smiled like a secret that finally found sunlight. They zoomed in, only to realize how far you've gone. You weren't posing, you were letting go. That picture screamed, "You don't get to know me now." They saw peace and realized they were chaos. You looked like stillness after the storm they created. Your photo became a mirror they refused to face. That wasn't a smile, it was survival turned sacred. You looked like their apology, left unsaid. That glow was made from nights they never stayed. They zoomed in, hoping for pain, found power instead. You weren't beautiful, you were untouchable. That image wasn't just you, it was every lesson they ignored. You looked like the end of a fantasy. They stared like the past owed them another chance. You smiled like a woman who chose herself. Your eyes didn't beg anymore, they warned. They zoomed in and saw the version of you that healed without them. That photo wasn't for attention, it was a boundary. You looked like a page they tried to tear out. That wasn't confidence, it was freedom wearing a face. They paused because your silence pierced deeper than your words ever did. You looked like the love they abandoned for comfort. That image wasn't for them, it was for the girl you used to be. You glowed like someone who doesn't need closure. They zoomed in on a photo, never realizing it was your resurrection. Your face said, "I found peace without your permission." That smile whispered, "I finally forgave myself." You looked like revenge that chose elegance. You didn't just survive, you bloomed. They saw everything they feared, your healing. That picture made their ego shiver. Your eyes didn't ask anymore, they declared. You looked too divine to regret. They zoomed in because they lost something priceless. That photo was your final word. You smiled like someone who remembers, but no longer aches. They stared because your beauty now feels like karma. That wasn't a picture, it was poetry surviving war. You looked like a soul no longer waiting to be rescued. That glow was crafted from abandonment. You were shining like you buried the past in gold. They zoomed in, but your spirit was already too far. That smile said, "You tried to break me. You only made me sacred. You didn't just move on, you evolved." My dear, they stared at your photo like a truth they buried long ago suddenly started breathing. They zoomed in like your face, whispered something their heart wasn't ready to hear. Your image felt like a confession disguised as beauty. That photo held something sacred, so they studied it like a priest studies sin. You looked too familiar, like someone they once prayed for but lost. They weren't zooming in on your face, they were zooming in on their failure. Your eyes said everything their guilt was trying to forget. That picture made them feel exposed, even though it wasn't about them. They looked closer because distance couldn't protect them anymore. You reminded them of the person they could never become. Something about you made their silence feel louder. Your face held memories they never signed up to revisit. That photo broke a dam of unsaid things. You were glowing like a goodbye dressed in gold. They didn't zoom in to admire you. They zoomed in to check if you were still hurting. You were too calm, and that scared them more than your rage ever could. They needed proof that you still belonged to the pain. That photo looked like forgiveness wearing lipstick. You looked too healed for their comfort. They were studying your peace like it betrayed them. You smiled like someone who buried a war in her chest. They zoomed in, hoping to see regret in your eyes, and found freedom instead. You were framed in that photo like a prayer finally answered. That picture held a haunting they couldn't name. You didn't just look good. You looked like revenge found a new religion. They wanted to see ruin and saw resurrection. Your photo said, "I survived what you swore would destroy me." You looked too divine for the dirt they threw. Your aura exposed the lie they built their ego on. They zoomed in to decode your glow, never realizing it came from grief. That smile wasn't joy, it was a scar that learned to sing. They paused, not because of your beauty, but because of their cowardice. Your silence in that picture was louder than any goodbye. They zoomed in, hoping to catch you broken, but you were the storm. That image was your closure and their beginning of regret. They didn't expect you to rise. That photo proved them wrong. You look like a memory that grew teeth. They zoomed in because distance couldn't hide the truth anymore. They saw peace in your posture, and it shattered them. Your photo echoed with everything they left unsaid. That face, it haunted them more than your words ever did. They saw everything they tried to erase, alive in you. You didn't just post a photo, you posted their punishment. You looked unbothered, and it cut deeper than screaming. Your stillness in that frame screamed louder than rage. They zoomed in, trying to find flaws, found the graveyard of their guilt. That picture didn't show your face. It showed their failure. You looked like grace they never deserved. They zoomed in because they missed the version of you who begged. Your face said, "I loved you, but I loved me more." You looked like a chapter they never learned to read. Your photo was proof that storms create goddesses. They paused the scroll because your soul refused to be ignored. Your image forced them to remember the softness they betrayed. They zoomed in to see if you still cared. You didn't. That smile wasn't happiness. It was liberation stitched into lips. You became too powerful to mourn. They zoomed in, hoping to see their name still in your eyes. Your beauty wasn't the problem. It was your peace. That photo whispered, "You lost me quietly and eternally." They saw everything they gave up for comfort. Your glow insulted the version of them that left. You looked like closure framed in gold. That wasn't just a photo. It was a resurrection. They stared like the past was punishing them in pixels. Your aura looked like it had no room left for them. They zoomed in, hoping to haunt you, but became the haunted. Your photo was a weapon you never had to wield. That image was a mirror they weren't ready to face. You smiled like someone who walked out of fire holding stars. They saw peace where they expected pain, and it terrified them. Your face didn't say, "Remember me." It said, "Release me." That wasn't a picture. It was poetry printed on heartbreak. They zoomed in because your stillness was too loud to scroll past. You looked like a future that never needed them. Your photo read like a warning disguised as warmth. That was the last time they ever saw you small. You weren't posing, you were declaring war without a sound. They zoomed in because that smile looked like the truth. If this touched your soul, don't scroll, like, comment your favorite quote, and subscribe for more. Your photo looked like you finally forgave yourself. They looked too long because your glow mocked their regrets. You looked unreachable, and they knew they caused that. That smile was their punishment.